Eyewitness Newsmakers with Adrian Alpert.
Today on Eyewitness Newsmakers, Mark Ridley-Thomas. Tomorrow, he's sworn in as LA's newest county supervisor. He won the 2nd District seat with more than 61% of the vote.
The past has given way to the future.
39% supported LA City Councilman Bernard Parks, who returns to finish his term. Ridley-Thomas, who officially ends his Senate term today, is a former teacher, civil rights leader, city councilman, and assemblyman. He succeeds retiring Supervisor Yvonne Burke and represents a district that covers from South LA, Compton, and Watts to Mar Vista and Culver City. His is the first new face on the County Board of Supervisors in 12 years. Belated congratulations to you, Supervisor-elect Ridley-Thomas.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. This is also your last day as state senator from the 26th District. With so much focus going on in Sacramento these days, why did you choose to return to local politics?
Well, very simply, this is my passion. And I appreciate the policy-making assignments that I've enjoyed over the term that I've been in public life, specifically in the state legislature. But this is an opportunity to serve in a more direct way, hands-on, with constituents, to advance the agenda that I have been concerned with for some 17 years of public life, that is empowerment of communities. This is a laboratory in which that can happen. And I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to serve in this context and honored that the people of the 2nd District have elected me.
You know, just 1 to 5 votes on the Board of Supervisors. 2 didn't endorse you, 2 were neutral. Do you think you can build a consensus and come up with alliances to try to get some of the things accomplished that you've set out to do?
Well, I certainly hope so, but the fact of the matter is the realities of decision-making would suggest that these votes are case by case, instance by instance, and to the extent that that is the case, I believe you will see a range of alignments on various issues. But the coalitions, the alliances, and the like, I don't know that that's going to be the way in which this board will function, nor do I necessarily know that that's the way that it has functioned in each instance in the past.
Well, you need to get a majority to get things passed, so you've
Right.
got to get some kind of cooperation among them.
Well, but case by case, vote by vote, that's what essentially matters.
Let me ask a top priority question, because it certainly, if it anything, sums up the district and some of the challenges it faces for you. Reopening Martin Luther King Jr. Harbor Hospital in Willowbrook. You've set a benchmark for reopening January 2010. No one has set this kind of benchmark before. Are you being overly ambitious about this?
Well, I'm being focused. I don't know how you accomplish goals or objectives unless you have specific timelines. And so what I've essentially suggested is January 2010 would be the time that we would set for the reopening of the hospital, and clearly the public ought to expect a report of consequence as to what kind of progress we will have made.
So that's your goal.
Right.
And when you say reopen, you mean all the beds up and functioning again as it is operating now as clinics only?
Well, it means that there will at minimum be a blueprint for going forward and a timetable that would essentially inform that blueprint. Such doesn't exist at this point in time, and to the extent that that is the case, I believe that the County of Los Angeles, its safety net is incredibly fragile. The Martin Luther King Medical Center is a part of that safety net, and we need to urgently move towards its reopening for the people of the Watts-Willowbrook area, but not only that particular community or those communities, but the entirety of the county itself.
When you talk about the fragile system, I wanted to jump ahead. We'll come back to the hospital in a moment, though, but not in your district. The new county USC Medical Center, Boyle Heights, opening with 600 inpatient beds, already a predicted strain there. Is any of that, you think, perhaps from the lack of beds at MLK?
Well, the closure of MLK has impacted the county district-wide. There's abundance of evidence to that effect. But LAC USC Medical Center has its own unique circumstances, challenges, as well as its opportunity, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in ensuring the best possible care there as well.
Gloria Molina, supervisor, had predicted that would be too few beds when it was scaled back, and perhaps it's already being proven true by her. Getting back to MLK, it closed to inpatients 2007 under state and federal regulators' pressure. Years of reform didn't work. Recently, there was the matter of 17 employees with criminal records disclosed. How can you solve a problem, though, when teams of medical administrators could not do that? We had many of them on this program, trying at various times saying, we're going to clean it up, we're going to take care of it. Where's the solution?
Well, fundamentally, I believe it was a lack of leadership, coupled with a lack of accountability. Those days are over. Patient care must be first, and that will be the mantra, non-negotiable. And to the extent that that message is felt and the consequences for violating it are appreciated, I'm confident that you will see a much higher quality of patient care, and people will hold their heads with a sense of pride and purpose as it relates to the Martin Luther King Medical Center, as it ought to be.
Speaking of accountability, there was a move to create a permanent independent investigator to oversee the hospital and its clinics. Do you think that's a good idea, or should the buck stop with the supervisors?
Well, as a legislator, I authored a bill that essentially called for an inspector general. It was vetoed by the governor, but that still would be my concern, that there is that level of oversight. This is coupled with the motion that was brought subsequently to have a similar auditor general of that sort. I believe that level of oversight, that level of transparency and accountability is necessary system-wide, not simply related to MLK Medical Center.
So when you say system-wide, that is someone who does what? Look at the books and just make sure that the money's going where it should and it's being spent and the people who are there are qualified to be doing what they're doing?
All of the above and more. That's what an inspector general does. That's what an auditor general does. And I believe that the Department of Health Services would benefit from such a role and responsibility.
A question I'll be asking probably in relation to a number of subjects, though. How does all this figure into the economy?
Well, none of this happens without appropriate support, resources, funding, which is a huge challenge. We clearly understand that, but I don't wish to cause that to be an excuse for not doing what needs to be done for the residents of the county of Los Angeles. These are essentially life and death issues, and we ought to treat them accordingly.
Recently, Governor Schwarzenegger said California's budget deficit widens by the day. The projected deficit, I don't know if I can keep up with the numbers, somewhere around $30 billion over the next 20 months. Nearly a quarter of the county's $22 billion budget is from the state. 83% of the county budget is mandated spending. By my math, that leaves only about 17% to the county supervisor's discretion.
Right.
Where would you cut if you had to at this point?
Well, I think the discussion shouldn't begin in terms of cuts. There are substantial needs at the state level, and I know those matters intimately. And the state essentially impacts cities and counties. There is a compelling argument to be made for increasing revenues so that the needs of this state, and they are varied, they are vast, are met. And until we come to grips with that, I do not default to the question of cutting. There needs to be an appropriate funding streams. This is a cyclical crisis that the state faces currently, but it's also a structural set of issues that we need to deal with in terms of sustained, reliable revenue streams. They are insufficient. And the people of this state have to recognize that, and the legislators have a responsibility, indeed an obligation, to stand up to the task of governing.
Do you plan to return to Sacramento after you've become a county supervisor as of tomorrow to meet with your former colleagues to try to impress upon them how much more you feel the need for that local spending to increase?
With the kind of regularity that they may not anticipate, that is some, and others have welcomed it, particularly the Speaker of the Assembly, Karen Bass, and the President Pro Tem of the Senate, Darrell Steinberg. We've already begun those conversations, and I'm pleased to have a very strong working relationship with the both of them, and I think that bodes well for the County of Los Angeles.
Supervisor-elect Mark Ridley-Thomas will have more conversation with you when we come right back.